Okay, so I'm actually going to do the countdown one more time because I just realized that 30 seconds is long enough for me to get a beer. So, hold on. Hey, look at that.
We're back. New location.
Woo!
Beer money in the background.
Yes.
Race winning MFer.
Song. There's a song there. I think like Drake or somebody, like something in the background. There's a song there. I know there is.
Yeah, we don't know much. We don't know much about that rap crap.
I know. So, so as Lyle said, he's on location. Him and the Peter Harrell in the house. You'll note that Pete didn't show up with the saxophone because he's a bitch. But I'm just saying. I'm a little grumpy today because Texans are some of the no drivingest sons of bitches on earth. And I left the shop and should have been home in 49 minutes. And then two assholes decided to run into each other and decided that they were incapable of driving their shit off the freeway. And I'm angry. And I don't care what anybody says. I'm just going to be pissy.
Okay. Drink that beer and eat a Snickers.
I know. I need a Snickers. I'm a hungry son of a bitch. I have had a donut and a kolache today. I don't know if you noticed, but I'm fat. I need more than that to keep going.
I don't know what a kolache is, but
it's like a hot dog and a dough thing.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool. Well, I wanted to chat. One, you're going to Las Vegas tomorrow for what?
For the Spring Fling Million bracket race.
Okay.
Which is going to be live here on bangshift.com and on Drag Racer TV. Me and Warren Evans, we're doing this.
Nice.
And we're just collaborating. And we're going to have a badass broadcast. So I'm super excited about that.
Yep.
I was not excited when the scissor lift delivery was postponed. So I've had to make some alternative arrangements for that for tomorrow. But yes, so going to Las Vegas. Yep. Going to be in Vegas through Sunday morning, which is Easter, then come home. Then I'm here until Thursday, then back in Vegas again for LS Fest West.
Right. Well, so we're Monday night. We're live tonight because one, Chad's going to be gone, and it just worked better.
Yeah.
Pete was free tonight, and I wanted to dedicate a show really to talk about the hot rod behind us and the folks that have pitched in and have sponsored and given parts and time and money to make it what it is. We had a really good year with it last year. Myself, Pete, the smorgasbord of people that come along and help us with the car. Eric Yost and Chris Bailey and TJ Cannon at Customs by Biggin spend a lot of time and effort to keep us up and running when I Barnett things. And so I just wanted to, it's time for us to go. I've got a list on my phone of the companies, and I'm going to let Pete talk about the motor and why he did what he did and why he made the changes he made and why he chose the turbo he chose. I get a lot of credit for, the things that go into this car and all this stuff, but really, I transport it to and from the racetrack, cover travel expense and whatnot, but all I do is drive it, Pete tunes it, whether he's with me at the racetrack or 500 miles away, like he was this past weekend. Thank God Boiling Springs, Pennsylvania had cell phone signal.
Darlington.
And Darlington. Yeah, at Darlington, because Pete was tuning somebody else's shit at Darlington. Andrew Tvornik's super clean and fast Mustang, who also won this past weekend. So I think it's been a while since Pete's lost a race. The
HE&D up arrow has been quite good.
The manipulator. But so without further ado, First on the list is the shop we're in is Pete and everybody at HED, Gabe, James, Jay. Pete spec this motor from intake to oil pan. It's I'll let Pete talk about what it is, and it's a stock block 6.2 LS that Pete spec'd, and I'll just kind of let him go through the parts he wants to go through and not give away too much of our dirty secrets.
Yeah, and it's good because we had actually yesterday I had a couple of people that asked me about Beer Money's engine combo. Scott Liggett was one of them, and he said that's not still the same 5.3 that was in it when you guys built it originally. And I said, no, it's been through a couple of 5.3s.
Yeah.
Lyle, on his first or second weekend tuning the thing on your own, went
let's use that term loosely. Pete let me go power manage.
Yes,
on my own,
there you go.
Told me that there was going to be a limit, and I found it.
Yes, you did, because apparently you went exactly 2 up arrows too many.
Yeah. So
in your defense, it was hauling ass until the rods decided.
It had been 5 flat with like 5 zeros behind the 5.
Yeah.
And I was like, by God, we're going a 4. And it was on a 4. And it spit the absolute ever-loving guts out of it. So then Pete
built. That was the original motor.
The OG.
Yeah.
It looked like that.
It broke a rod because those stock rods. But that block never failed. It just poked the rod through the side of it.
It did.
Right.
So then we built the second. So then we built the second 5.3. And we ran that thing until you can talk about.
Yeah, so that one was built to run on the street a little bit, so it was half filled, and then after a gazillion passes, it broke the top of one of the cylinders out, and just that was that.
And it pushed it in the water jacket where we stopped the fill.
Literally.
And that's the only reason. And we literally, it didn't hurt anything else. I think it needed a piston.
Yeah,
maybe if that.
Yeah.
But we were gonna just build another 5.3, and then Pete decided to build what's in it, and I'll let him tell you about that. So.
Yeah, so what's in it now? We wanted to lose some weight, so it's an aluminum 6.2, and that's according to the LS gurus. I guess it's not considered the motor to build for big power stock block stuff, but it seems to work fine. We had some initial problems, but after we changed a couple things, it's been running. I don't know how many passes we've got on this thing.
I don't either.
And some of them with quite a bit of power.
Well, I mean, really fast.
Yeah. I mean, just outrageous,
Yeah, the car has been really, really quick and fast.
I mean,
we're not going to tell you how quick.
I'm willing to bet that I bet it's 3 to 4 tenths faster than most people think.
Right.
It's
ridiculously fast when we want to go fast. And it's faster than I would have believed possible. It's just ridiculous.
Well, 2 weeks ago we were at Shadyside for Luck of the Draw, that no prep race, and pretty effortlessly we were knocking on a personal best door. I mean, Pete wasn't trying with the tune-up. He wasn't like, we're going to give it a bunch of timing, right? Or we're going to give it like ass loads of boost. The track came to us, didn't really give it a whole lot of power, and we went, fast enough where I'm like, that's good. Like I'm with the cage we built in 2018 in 10 days that's still in the car. You're like, I'm good right there. There's some things that need to be done, but
when it ran a career or a personal best last year, you called me and told me what it ran, and I said to you on the phone, God, I wonder how quick and fast that thing would run in the quarter mile. And your exact words to me were, I don't give a shit. You can drive it as quick and fast as you want, but I ain't driving that son of a bitch fast 660 feet.
Hell
no way.
Ain't happening. No, but like Pete decided, we've from the firewall forward, nothing much is the same from the show. Fuel cell placement is relatively close. Turbo placement's relatively close.
Yeah, it does not have the mini beer keg anymore as the
No, we had to upgrade to I reused the puke tank and burn down tank out of my Corvette, the crispy Corvette.
Oh, nice.
Is what's in Beer Money now. So Beer Money has literal reused RVW parts in it for, the most part. But, we went bigger turbo. This is Precision Pro Mod 98. So what you would normally put as a twin turbo setup, right? But we're obviously running it as a single, and Pete can tell you why he chose that, and with the fuel system, the way that where we went with that. Jack at Billet Atomizer, a huge supporter of our program. We went obviously with Billet Atomizer fuel injectors because we're on alcohol, but Pete can talk about why he went with the turbo he went with the size hot side we went with, and why it works so well.
Yeah. So the whole thing kind of works together as a package. Being as we're no prepping, we like in the motor, we did things to kill in the camshaft and the intake. I guess you could say we did things to kill torque, right? We wanted to move the power band up top to, if there's a radial deal, we might do the opposite. But in this case, we want to kind of kill the bottom. So it's kind of over cammed and cammed where it kills torque a little bit. And the heads are bigger than you would generally need on a motor like this, but altogether it works great. The turbo itself is 98 millimeter. The backside is kind of sized just a little bit smaller than some of the 98s out there for sure. And that's just so we can spool and have, with no prep, you can't leave with a bunch of RPM. So you got to be able to get the RPM down and still wind the turbo up. You don't need a lot of boost either, but you can't have the thing just completely turned off, And then it's a 98, so it'll make outrageous amounts of power. But I don't foresee us really having to push it to where this turbo will go. But what it will do is keep the back pressure down a little bit. And in my opinion, with the stock block, anything you can do to lower that, that amount of heat in there, the happier things are going to be. So,
and before we got on tonight, it's on the Projects now. I got under it, zipped the oil filter off of it. And it looks, I check it, and it's me being me, with the kind of power we're making and the speeds we're running, the stock block worries me every time I let go of the button. But I mean, honestly, man, we haven't seen anything that raises any red flags. Oil filter looks like a brand new one out of the box that we just poured oil in, so motors,
and
engines.
Over the winter, we didn't even do anything to it. We just took the pan off and looked at it. Everything looked fine, so we just put it back together.
Yeah, we were killing transmissions, and like I told you on the show a couple weeks ago, Tom Parks is like, dude, will you please stop putting me through this torture with this stock case, stock gear set, bone stock 400, and this thing didn't have a mid plate, and we'll move to Eric Yost at Customs by Big, and I had him and Bailey put a mid plate in it. It was breaking bell housings and just destroying transmissions. Nothing Tom did, none of Tom's fault. I sent the transmission to Dave at Proformance. He did all his tricks and whatnot that him and Pete have worked together on a little bit to make the Turbo 400, a better piece. And we've put it in, and since then have had great success, good luck. And it's went well. So Pete's got a dump solenoid set up that we're going to, use, and that he also offers that we're going to kind of start to implement into our program here in the future. We haven't done that yet. Haven't really found, I'm sure there's benefit to it, and Pete knows how that works. I just let go of the button. I've said that, but he is going to put his solenoid set up on it.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that. So, we throw terms around all the time because we're used to them and we're at the racetrack, and these are just the things we deal with. But explain what, a dump valve is and how that works and what it does for this particular combo. Yeah, let's say versus a Pro Mod or something, or an RVW car.
Yeah, well, dump valves, I guess they can kind of mean more than one thing, but as of right now, I've never even used my own dump valves on this car. I guess I don't really know why. We just never have, but probably should have. But anyhow, it's working, so we didn't fix it. But what it does in this case is it allows you to control the pressure that's in the converter by restricting the output side of the converter, right? So basically, where your fluid exits where it would normally go into a cooler or whatever, generally we kind of run that back into the pan or back into the transmission. You can get in that circuit there and manipulate the pressure. And what this does is it tightens or loosens the converter. And therefore it can be harder or softer on the tire, right? And that's the basics of it. We can get into the physics of it if we need to, but it can be a very important tool in the toolbox. If you've got something that's hammering the tire, you can loosen things up. It allows you kind of to have a tighter converter, or it allows you to have a tighter converter and then loosen it up. Obviously, anybody knows a looser converter is easier to get down the racetrack, period. Right. And so it allows you to take a converter or run a converter that's a little bit on the tight side and make it act looser on the starting line. And that a lot of that depends on the manufacturer of the converter, because in the past we've seen some converters are really super conducive to this type of pressure manipulation, and some of them don't give a damn. Like you can just dump the pressure and it won't even change anything. But
really,
yeah, believe it or not, and all that has to do with the amount of fluid that's flowing through the torque converter. We've kind of figured that out. But
right.
And speaking on converters, Pete and I have used Greg Slack for years. I mean, there's lots of great converter companies out there, and I think they all do well in their respective combinations, and there are teams that are loyal to one and the other. And, but myself, Pete, pretty much anybody on this compound and anybody that trusts us to, have input on their combination and whatnot, we use Greg Slack pretty exclusively. And I own, or Pete and I, should I say, own several of his converters for this car alone, and I'm one of those that, as opposed to owning one converter and keep sending it back to have it changed, if we get a converter that works, I'll pay the money to have another one built before I send one back. To, I have this fear, and I'm not saying Greg's not capable, but I have this fear of sending a working converter back and never getting it back the way it was. Right.
Right.
Pete, we bought another one for this thing last year. The 3-bolt deal that we ran in this car until we put this new one in is sitting right up there on the shelf, and should a day come where we ever needed it, or I think actually James White that works here at the shop for Pete is going to stick it in his combo for a little bit and try it out, because it's, right on par for what he would need. But Greg's is one of those converters that's pretty conducive to what Pete does with fluid pressure manipulation and whatnot, and we obviously appreciate Greg and thank him and his wife and all the guys there at Converter Design Specialist for what they do for us. The Dart runs Greg's stuff. Beer Money runs Greg's stuff. Mark Rogers, Biggin, Chris Bailey, anybody, a lot of the cars that come through this shop and trust Pete in the tuning process, we send them that direction. One, he's local to us, and I think he's one of the most brilliant minds in the converter game that there is. Greg's been doing this a long time, and you go to his shop, and if you've got an hour and a half or 2 hours to spend, you'll understand what we're talking about. Greg's just he's one of the good ones, and he's been doing it a while, and I hope he's here forever. But we really appreciate their help, and they've been a huge part of our success with this thing over the past several years.
Yeah, my policy here as an engine builder, I have to deal with a lot of customers that may have good relationships with all kinds of torque converter manufacturers, and my policy has always been that I'll work with their stuff as long as it works. And if we get to a point where it doesn't work, I push them towards the slack. But if their stuff is working, we work with it. No problem. Right. And, but if they come to me and they don't have any preference and they don't have a converter, then Greg always does a converter for us,
Right.
And one thing me and Greg have been buddies for over 20 years now. And I've used, I don't know how many of his converters. I don't think I've ever damaged a single one.
I don't think I have.
Like they're completely bulletproof. You just can't tear them up,
Well, and what I really like, and there's other converter. I'm not taking anything away from any other converter company, because I've got great friends that are out there that
there's all kinds of great converters.
There are. But one thing I will say about Greg, and I'm not saying I haven't experienced this with anybody else, but especially if you can give him the information he needs, not one time have I gotten a converter from Greg that wasn't either dead on or damn close the very first time. In fact, for this car, this is the third converter of Greg's that's been in it, and not one time have we gotten a converter and not left it in there for months or a year or more until we were ready to take the next step. Right.
You only changed converter because you were changing the combination significantly enough to need that.
That's another thing with this combination. The converter that is intentionally left really loose so the motor can get up, right? and that is another thing that's easy on the tire, and that's absolutely on purpose. If we were going to go radio racing with this thing, which would be suicide, but if we were,
not happening.
Right. If we were to do that, the first thing would happen is you pull the converter out and tighten it up.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. But Greg, if he's on here, maybe you'll see it later. We just appreciate all you've done. You're good friends of ours and build a hell of a product. But I'm just going to go through the list. Precision Turbo, obviously they've been very good to us. This is the second turbo from them that they've hooked us up with. I've still got the LS, the 85 that we ran for 2 years, and it saw a couple motors and ran really well. And the only reason we took it off when we built this new motor, we put the 85 on this motor, and Pete realized very quickly that we were going to run out of turbo.
Yeah, it's like we were running out of power, and we're getting to the point where to get any more power, we have to put what I call tune-up in it, right?
Right.
Tune-up is hard on parts, so we don't want to do that. So it's easier to let's just over-turbo it and let it cruise.
Well, and in this particular scenario, any deficiencies down low from having the big turbo are actually not a deficiency, because you're talking about a no prep scenario where you're trying to kill power down there anyway.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So thanks to the guys at Precision. Next I'm literally just going down my list is Holly. We've ran Holly EFI for years. Got it on pretty much anything house related. They've been very good to us. Ryan, Doug, Robin, all the guys at Holly that answer our stupid questions or phone calls at midnight, or and help us through the issues, and have given us parts and whatnot. Pete works hand in hand with them a lot. It's not the only thing, like some people have thought, I think, not the only thing Pete tunes, but obviously what he prefers. And those guys have been great. Pete talks to them often. I've, believe it or not, managed to learn the software, and I can take this car to the track without Pete and manage to download things, send him things, receive emails back of tune-ups, and put them in the race car. So if I'm capable of doing it, yes, I mean, every time, for the most part, every time. So, the guys at Holly are great. And, and we obviously thank them for their support. Tommy Kirk and everybody at MacFab, I tell the story all the time. When MacFab, the name started, it was what myself, my dad, Tommy Kirk, Jason Muller, Scotty, and the guys there, that's what we just wanted something to put on a t-shirt, right? So that was just our race team name. Tommy turned it into a very successful beadlock business, and they're huge supporters of us. Now all combined into one: Motion Raceworks, TBM brakes, and Rife sensors. There are lots of Motion Raceworks parts on this car. I thought earlier that I would try to name them all, and I know I'm going to miss some, but I'm going to look back here at the motor. Icon throttle body. We added that when we put this new engine and turbo on. I've got their valve covers, their valley cover, Rife sensor blocks. I've got Motion Raceworks chute handle, CO2 bottle mount, their diaper, their motor plate. James, can you think of anything else? I've got a MPI, a Cletus at McFarland edition. Fuel. Oh yes. Side slinger fuel pump mount for the mechanical fuel pump. Bought all the fuel system through them.
So talk about the fuel system when you're done talking about all the motion parts. I want Pete to talk about the actual fuel system in the car too.
So I think I've covered all the parts. I know I probably haven't, but you get the gist. Doug and Motion Raceworks have been a huge supporter of our program. I was one of the Dart and myself, Pete. We were some of the first cars they ever sponsored, like back in 2016 or 15 or something like that, and Doug's a great friend of mine, one of my best friends, him and his brother and Brian, all the guys at Motion, Cletus, and they've had most, if not all, the parts I've ever needed when it comes to stuff like that. But from the fuel system standpoint, we went to alcohol. I went to their side slinger with a Magna Fuel, their Outlaw 1000, I think. and was great for a while, you know, and it got to a point where we were out of fuel pump, you know, and so they are a dealer for Weldon. I think that's a Waterman. That's a Waterman that's on that thing, you know, and Pete can talk about how he knew that, you know, and what goes on, but they were suppliers of all that. And again, you know, we're just a huge part of our program, but Pete can talk about the fuel system and how he chooses that and why.
Yeah, well, the fuel system, honestly, I don't even know much about that pump that's on here. It's just bigger than the other one. That's all I know.
It's a big one.
but
Pete said we needed more fuel.
we got not enough.
Get me another fuel pump. And I
Right.
said, aye, Captain.
Yeah, so basically, the telltale signs of that are if you turn the boost up and the fuel pressure doesn't come up with it, you need to
You
make
need
a
some
change.
pump, right?
Because you're going to be out of pistons
Yeah.
if you don't. So, and the injectors are billet atomizers, which we use on about everything around here, really.
Yep.
And,
How
Jack,
big are those injectors, and how many of them are there?
these are 500s.
Yep.
which Jack said we'd never get to the end of.
Correct. So when we originally got these injectors from Jack, I told him what we had and what we were doing. And I said, we're never going to make more than about this much horsepower. And he's like, 500s will be good. Well, we're almost to the limit of that, and it's not Jack's fault. You know, we're typical drag racing mentality. Fast enough is never fast enough. And we've gotten to the point. So I actually talked to Jack this morning. We're adding some injectors to the charge pipe. When Melissa and I, which we're counting down the weeks now to Bambino #1, when he comes, I'm going to pull these out, ship them to Jack. He's going to punch these out a little bit bigger, just so we're plenty safe on the fuel tune-up, you know. But Jack's been a huge part of our program for many years and has always been very good to us and hooked us up. So, Jack, if you're on here, we appreciate all you've done as well.
Yeah, we're just going faster now than even we ever thought we would need to. So,
Way
Pete,
faster.
I have a question for you, because I know when Jack first really started to gain some notoriety, okay, and people started talking about billet atomizers outside of the ultra hardcore racing world, there were a lot of critics, a lot of people that were ultra harsh saying there's no way you can put injectors that big in an engine and have it run nice and have any kind of tunability except at wide open throttle. You know, they'll suck trying to do a burnout or idling into the, you know, water, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's just not the case. Are there any secrets to it, or are these injectors really just that good?
Well, in the case of this car, there really aren't any secrets. It's run straight off the Holly. There's not a driver box or anything. The driver boxes are great, but the real big ones, they seem to help a little bit, you know, but this thing doesn't have any of that. And people all the time comment about how this car cranks up and idles. It idles like a sewing machine, you know? So
Yeah.
Sounds like, and it's not taking anything away from the guys that run the no prep stuff, but there is a considerable difference in the tone, the sound of the car in the Burnout. You can, I'm big on, you know, you notice these things as you've raced more. You can tell the quality, I guess you would say, of the engine tune-up of a car in the Burnout box, you know, and like this thing, dude, is like, I mean, smooth, it's crisp, it just sounds good. And that's, you know, there's a lot that goes into that, right? Like, you know, Pete's obviously got a great fuel map in it and a good tune-up. Jack's injectors, you know, are atomized with fuel well. You know, there's those things work hand in hand. You can have the best injector in the world and the shittiest tune-up, you know, and they don't work, right? And vice versa. You know, you got the best tune-up in the world and the worst injector, you know, and it not be good. And so the two, you know, that you can't have one without the other. If the car's going to run good, you got to have both, you know. So, but
you know, it's funny because there's, I know this is going to sound weird, but it does matter more in the no prep world too, because every single bet that is placed on the starting line during a no prep race is based in some way, shape, or form on the burnout that is happening.
quality of the burnout,
right?
agreed 100%.
That is, dude, That is the deal. You start laying down the burnout and people are pointing, and waving money. That shit is how it works, dude.
You're probably right.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that there, especially if you go somewhere where maybe the cars aren't known.
Yes.
Like maybe it's a 50-50 on who everybody thinks going to win,
yes.
I'm very proud of my burnouts. Like I've worked really hard to make them spectacular at times, and like I will stretch one out as far as anybody, right? And
well,
I'm not.
The other thing is in no prep, there are many times where I'm trying to get you, if possible, to burn out over a particular spot.
Correct. Yep.
Especially in the early rounds, because the track may start off really, really sketchy, and we want to get you at least. Sometimes it's impossible, but try to get things starting off from a certain point. So if you're struggling with the burnout motor wise, you're not going to be able to do that.
Just to get one going, right? And there's another reason. Like we inevitably when we go to the racetrack at some of these events, we've got 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, guys that come with us, and and sometimes these podunk racetracks that we race at, uneven burnout boxes and a bunch of crown in the racetrack or something, and I see people giving people crap about holding the car in the burnout, right? But like at some of these events, it's pretty crucial to keep that thing straight so that I can get the car moving, because when the car's not moving, it's kind of if there's a bunch of crown or a washout, like the car's going wherever the car's going. There's nothing I can do to change that, But if you can get the car on a path, and burn out over a particular spot, like where we were in Pennsylvania this past weekend, it was one of the worst surfaces I've seen, but one of the best no prep surfaces, but it was sketchy, man. Like the track hadn't been ran on since like the end of last year. It was 40 degrees. It transitioned to tar and gravel at 100 feet. Like it was a pretty sketchy surface, and I was doing 100-foot burnouts, 60-foot burnouts at least, like every lap, and I saw guys doing burnouts stopping before the tree. I'm like, dude, you are just giving up a good opportunity, one, to sell t-shirts, and two, to give yourself something to leave the starting line in,
Well, yeah, I don't understand that because, if you go to like redemption races here, they didn't allow a burnout past the starting line, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're racing at a race where they don't allow a burnout past the starting line, then I understand. But if they do, then I'm going to take full advantage.
Right.
And you know what? I'm going to take advantage of being able to do a long burnout whenever I can, even if I don't need to, as long as it won't hurt the performance, because dude, that's half the fun of driving a race car is doing a big hairy burnout out there 100, 200, 300 feet, whatever. I mean, that's fun. Why wouldn't you, know?
Yeah. And the flip side of that is if you go to a radio event, all the noobs burn out over the starting line and rip up all the glue.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Like most people know at a radio event, you stop your burnout a full car length and a half at least from the starting line and then roll through, try to pick up as much glue as you can, but on a bi-sply, like we're running on a slick, especially no prep, the longer the burnout, the better, if you could do one to the 8th mile, good on you, man. But I mean, they're different. I mean, different strokes for different folks, but whatever.
Brent says that you're cheaters.
Yeah.
I mean,
whatever.
No, we're not cheaters. We're cherry pickers.
I can't even do it. It's not right.
There are no rules. How can you cheat?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Pete uses line to line for piston coating, and we've coated rotors on oil pumps. Brian Neal, who is the local rep for us here in the Southeast, at least, is down in South Carolina, and we use him, or Pete does, exclusively for piston coating and whatnot here. I know nothing about how that works and why. I just know that when Brian Neal sprays the black magic on those things, it is good to go.
Yeah, I use it
about that.
I use it constantly. There's probably a set or two down at Brian's right now.
And so, do you coat only the skirts, or do you also coat the tops of the pistons, or what?
Generally, the skirts. That's it. Yeah. And I've been all around this for years with various different coatings, and I've seen the upsides and downsides of a few of them. And the stuff Brian does is great. We don't ever have a problem. I've literally never had a problem out of a single piston that he's coated, and it's very effective. It does the job, you know.
And what is that job for people that may be watching that don't know? Why do you coat skirts?
Well, so I do it for different reasons. A lot of times, one of the main reasons I do it is when a motor comes in here to get freshened up. A lot of times I'll pull the pistons out, and if everything looks good, we just, you know, the cylinders need some honing and whatnot. Brian will coat the pistons for me, and I'll have him add 3/4 thousandths whatever to it. There, with that extra diameter, that allows me to hone 3 or 4 thousandths out of the cylinder and get back to zero. So it allows me to just straighten things up and start over without having to order another set of pistons, which you're probably not going to get until 2024 anyhow.
Right.
And we don't have to do that. You know, we can just put rings on it, coat it, hone it, and go back to work. You know,
that's awesome.
And they coat, like, pistons isn't the only thing they coat. You know, we've had some trash go through the Darts oil pump. They coated the rotors and the inside of the case there, whatever you want to call it, on that thing, sealed it right back up. They coat turbo housings, I mean, there's that. Piston skirts is not the only thing they coat. It's just primarily what Pete uses their coating for.
Right.
Do
line
they
to
do
line,
standard like powder coating and that kind of thing too, or
how could I know?
only high performance coating?
I think it's abradable.
Yeah. So
like
the coating that they do is different than any other coating I've ever used, especially for pistons. It's an abradable coating. So what we'll do is we'll coat it enough where the clearance is actually a lot of times considerably less than we would normally run.
Right.
Then, as you warm it up and break it in a little bit, it wears off the excess, and then it stabilizes with kind of an ideal clearance, right?
Yeah.
And then you go to work. So
Really?
it allows you, the effective clearance is less than it would normally be, because normally you'd have to build in some extra so you don't get in trouble.
Right.
Or with this, if you do get in trouble, it just scrubs a little bit of more coating off, so you can run it tighter.
Right. Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
You know, the next one, I'm again going down the list. Pete has started using them for cylinder heads, high-end cylinder heads, not necessarily exclusively, but for the majority. Mast Motorsports, Tom Parks, who done our transmission stuff here. He moved to Texas, now works for Mast, and that's Mast Black Label LS3 heads are what's on this engine here. Actually, we're looking at Brad Edwards' engine over here, the dumpster heads that Pete, it talks about that when they, have pulled out of the dumpster a couple times now. These things here were some of their like R&D heads that were literally in the dumpster.
Yeah, they were in the dumpster too.
And they fixed them back up. I mean, there's 6-bolt heads that they mowed the bottom row off. So we're running a stock block, so it doesn't matter, right? Like that,
right.
That last set of bolt holes wouldn't have been used anyway. And they sent them to us. Pete did his thing to them, got them right, and they are on top of this stock block, and they're pretty badass heads. He's used them, obviously brand new sets on customer engines.
Yeah, we use quite a bit of these things, and they work great. I don't ever have a problem out of them. These things we haven't done anything to them since we put them on.
We bolted them on, and they've been on this engine ever since. So thanks to those guys too. New to the program over the past year is Mincer Motorsports. We've used Mincer stuff for years on the radio stuff. He's kind of the go-to. If you're radio racing, I called Mark and said, look, Beer Money had like Summit bought QA1s and some strange, their equivalent to an adjustable 9010 on the front.
Yeah, exactly.
It was what we put on it on the show.
Yeah, exactly.
And we got to the point where we were running fast enough and putting enough power down that it was time. And I called Mark and I said, look, small tire, no prep, going on Beer Money. And his words to me were, say no more. You'll see them in a couple weeks. And so both shocks and struts, all 4 corners are Mincer on this thing. And I mean, out of the box, we adjust them where we thought they needed to be, and we really haven't touched them.
Not mess with them yet.
I went to this race in Pennsylvania where the track was super sketchy. I loosened the front, the old 2-click, and she hauled ass, and obviously we picked up the win. So thanks to those guys.
And
let me make a comment about Menser and quite frankly, any not off the shelf shock or strut. Okay. There's a lot of people out there that are tuning shocks and struts. Anybody who touches one and changes the valving, the reason for that is the 2 clicks, like you just said, right?
Yeah.
So if those were stock struts, stock AFCO stuff that he hadn't touched, it would have taken 6 or 8 clicks to see some difference, right? So what he does, because they're dealing with people in this big range, but what a tuner like Menser does is goes, okay, well, you only care about this range over here. So I'm going to give you all the clicks still, but they're only going to affect here, which means that every click actually has some impact on how the car works. And you can't get that any other way than doing that.
No, if you've had any experience with any kind of aftermarket style strut, and there's a lot of great struts and shocks out there, right? Menser is, has been good to us and is who we choose. Most of the time, your adjustment in the strut is like the last 4 and the first 4. The middle, there's like no change. You get, if you need to tighten that thing up, you can click, 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 and then the last 4 clicks, all of a sudden you've got it where when you jack the car up, it holds the tire up.
Right.
You loosen it 2, and it might drop it a little bit. You loosen it 2 more than that, and it drops to the floor. So, but with Menser's deal, we adjusted a click or 2 at a time. And it works great. Pete made a good point. I got kind of out of order when we were talking about the heads. T&D rockers on this thing. We went solid roller, got away from the hydraulic. Mat
and push
rods, BAM lifters,
yep.
pack springs. All
those boys at Manton are awesome.
Yep.
How many times have we adjusted the valves?
I was going to ask you today if you want me to pull the valve covers off for the first time since last year. But I shouldn't have said that, but
dude, a solid roller camshaft. The whole reason to have it is that you go check it. You jack it.
Well, we don't much. We change the oil and check the filter, and if it looks good, we know that everything from the filter up must be fine. So I am going to pull the valve covers off this week. We're going to totally derail for like a second and talk about one thing. Pete and I have decided that we're no longer going to announce where we're going racing with this car. And that is a method. There's a method to the madness. We've come to realize that when we announce where we're going, it affects car count.
Yeah.
And most of these no prep events are dependent on car count for the purse to pay good. So from this point forward, no announcement until we pull in the gate. There's your
radio silence
PSA for the day. Speaking on the engine I should have done this better. Race winning brands, Vic at Wiseco, a friend of mine, a friend of Pete's. Pete's worked with him for years. He did us a solid on the bottom end of this thing. K1 crankshaft in this, something off the shelf. We were pretty specific when we built it about using off the shelf stuff so that if someone came along and decided they wanted a beer money like engine, is something Pete didn't have to really spec again, right? It's this part number off the shelf. It's this part number off the shelf. These are off the shelf parts. And we did that on purpose for that very reason, right? So a K1 crankshaft, stock stroke, or is this thing?
Yeah, stock stroke, once again, to kill torque, to calm the bottom down. There's and I use stock stroke on about everything comes out of here. That's a lot of the stuff anyhow. And it's we've got a boost line rod in it, which those things are beefy, and it's amazing how much this thing has made a lot of power on a steel rod, and live to tell about it. And then the Wiseco custom piston just for this thing. That's really nothing exotic, but it works great. And things
that we put Darton sleeves in it. Yeah.
Well, we did that because this block came in here and it needed us. It was somebody somebody poked a hole in the factory one or something. So we put sleeves in it, but we wouldn't do that again. There's no reason to. We just fill it and be done with it.
Yeah. And this thing is a couple options, which with the supply deal issues we've got going on now, this thing is epoxy filled. And we did that really for weight savings when And then Pete was trying out this new epoxy deal to see what it, the pros and cons of that, but we did that really for weight savings, I guess, if I remember right.
Yeah, it's probably
what is it like filling the block with epoxy compared to the concrete?
it's no different, really. I mean, it's very similar. It takes
Is it easier?
No, I mean it's about the same. It takes a little longer to set up because you got to wait for a chemical reaction. But it doesn't. It's no different. But it's probably a third of the weight, so it's significantly lighter.
Yeah,
and 10 times the money, I'm assuming.
Yeah, it's significantly more expensive for sure.
Yeah,
we went from an iron stock 5.3 block half filled with concrete or rock block, I guess, to an aluminum. It's still a stock block, but epoxy filled. And I think we figured out we lost about 120 pounds off the nose.
Yeah, I think the block alone, you're probably going to lose about 100, but with the epoxy instead of hard block, probably another 20 pounds or so.
Yeah. So 120 pounds off the nose of the car, and like any other race car setup deal that you're going through or dealing with, weight bias is huge, right? Like we always talk about weight percentages front to rear, and obviously in the no prep deal, it's you're definitely not heavier on the nose. So it made it a lot easier for us to, it really naturally, it got us no prep friendly, right? It took 120 pounds off the nose.
Yeah, that was a pretty big change.
Yeah, then overall allowed us to run less weight.
Right. It just changed the bias of the car, and instantly it made it more no prep friendly.
Yeah.
So,
and we're, Pete talked about it earlier, how on a radial it would be suicide. This thing from now on will never see anything but a bias ply. Like we've finally got it figured out, which we've had it figured out for a while now, but we're super comfortable on the bias ply. I figured out how to drive it right. And that's what this car will stay on. One, you put a radio on it, it's going to kill everything else, rear ends and God knows what else. The car would run a bazillion miles an hour and it would just get us in trouble. So bias ply for life. Thank you to Hoosier. You guys are great as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna do pretty soon. I'm gonna do a video on my channel about I think I've narrowed down like 4 things that are essential for no prep racing. 4 things you gotta have.
Right.
And the slick might make that list.
Right.
A Facebook user put up Lyle is the stone cold Steve Austin of no prep racing.
Does that mean I'm the beer drinking son of a bitch or something?
Yes, it does.
One I've held off on that I want to make sure we spend a lot of time on. Pete and him are good buddies. Is Shannon Davis at Davis Technologies.
Dude, Shannon's awesome.
We run pretty much everything Shannon offers in this thing, and it is super. It's a huge component and a large part of our success in the no prep world. The Profiler, second to none in traction control, in my opinion, and I think Pete would obviously agree. The VPS, the vehicle positioning sensor, another tool that Pete uses every run. We look at data from both. I'll let him talk. It is the most mind-boggling thing to look at to me. I didn't even, in fact, over the weekend, I told Pete, find something that you really feel comfortable with running this fast. And we didn't even touch the Profiler all weekend long. He doctored on the tune-up, and actually he can talk about how he pulled power and we went faster. But Shannon's stuff is excellent. He's a huge part of our success. And Pete's, him and Pete are good buddies. So,
yeah, well, with no prep, in my opinion, you just got to have something. And the Davis stuff is the best there is, in my opinion. And it still amazes me the number of people that we race against that are barefoot.
What we call barefoot,
right?
Yeah,
which is no TC of any sort. And to me, that's just completely insane. Like, I cannot believe that there's a mentality out there. Oh, I can tune around it. Well, it's part of your tune-up. Like a prime example is this weekend. I sent them up there, and I have a kind of intended spot that we're trying to get to, and we didn't change that all weekend.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't change. I changed the amount of power and how we're applying that power to get to there, but that target was good enough
mm-hmm.
to get the job done as anticipated, And a car like this, some stuff, like, I don't try to sell a profiler to everybody that comes in the door. If you're a budget radial racer, I'm probably not going to try to sell you a profiler.
Right.
Sorry, Shannon. but if you're a high end, you got money, radial racer, I'm gonna try to sell you one. You're because it's definitely a tool in the toolbox that, in my opinion, you need. But in my opinion, if you're coming in here no prep racing, you need to buy that before you buy anything.
100%.
And if you don't do that, you're a fool. Like, it's just how it works.
Yep.
Hate it for you, but
I mean, I guess we could show some data, and maybe you should include that in your No Prep YouTube channel. But we were looking at it before we got on the show tonight. Pete had the data up off of the car from the final round this past weekend, and it's unbelievable how consistent, like we looked at a couple runs back to back, and what it proved was just what you thought, was that the racetrack that we were running on was not going to come around, as we call it, right? It wasn't going to come to us. There was the track improving as the rounds went on, like we had what we had, and that thing, I mean, the profile, we rode it, right? Let's be honest.
It's riding on it the whole time. And that's, generally speaking, how I run a no prep car, is on that box. It's just the name of the game,
and we went ridiculously fast. Like, for the quality of the surface we ran on, I could not. Now we run the VPS.
Well, here's a testament to what we're talking about here. When is the last time that we have not gone A to B in this car?
I have no idea.
It just never happens.
No.
We go down the track every single time.
Yeah.
And that's it entirely because of the traction control or the wheel speed management, you may call it, strategy.
Yeah, but you know what? It's funny, Pete. You and I have had this conversation. You've preached this to people for years. It doesn't matter whether it's radial racing or it's no prep, and I'm using those two because they're the extreme examples. If you go down the racetrack every single time, you will beat somebody that is better than you at every single season. There will be somebody you beat because they beat themselves because they blow the tires up.
Yeah, that's right.
We know that in radial racing, how many times has the dude that's a half second slower still made the win because his shit went down every time, and the other guy in the other lane spun the tires and had him covered, Yeah,
the way I talk about this is that the guy that's a little more conservative and goes down every single time, or almost all the time, every one of those passes that may be a little bit slower, he may see something in that data that picks him up 1,000th or 100th or something, right? And if you pick up 100 10 times, guess what? That's a 10.
Yeah, exactly.
And it doesn't take long until you're king dingling. That's just how it works.
And we
wait a second. Hold on, King Dingling. I want Lyle to get a King Dingling. That's what you need to do.
I've got one right here. Yeah, this guy right here. But and there have been times that we went to no prep races, where maybe they allowed a shakedown, or maybe it was just first round, and we put something in it that we're very confident is going down the racetrack and going to be relatively fast, right?
I call this pass the demoralizer.
Yeah. and it's a huge part. We were talking about this earlier. It's a huge part of the no prep game. We go to a racetrack, and I'll guarantee you that off the trailer, we're going down the racetrack. I don't give a damn where we go.
Every single time,
without
fail, it's going down.
And it looks, the car sounds mean. It runs a lot of speed, and it's set. I guess I'll say it sets the tone, right? People are coming by like, dude, why do you have to come do that? I mean, there were people coming by the trailer after we made and it was the first pass we made Saturday was the slowest we ran all day, which is normal. Like we go out there on a green racetrack and there were people coming by like, dude, how did you do that? Well, and I'm like, well, that wasn't me. I got that tune up from 500 miles away, but we rode the box, and I let go of the button. The box grabbed the tire, it drove it off. And we go down the racetrack, and it causes our competitors, I guess, to take unnecessary risk, because they just think, and they're right in thinking that we're fast, but there's a 100, most of the time, we're actually all the time. I don't know the last time we didn't go down the racetrack. We are going A to B, and it forces people to try to run a personal best, or, maybe get outside of their normal tuning range or comfort zone, and that's another big tool in our toolbox that is not necessarily a part of the car. It's just a part of the game we play.
Right. And that's really just a drag racing thing.
It is.
Right. If you're the fastest guy in RVW or whatever, then the guy in the other lane is inherently going to be a little bit, on his hind, back on his heels, so.
Right. Well, and it's funny though, because it's real easy to get, to beat yourself, right?
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
Well, I call it kicking your own ass. And
yeah, exactly. Yes,
lots of drag racers do it all the time.
Oh yeah,
don't do that. Don't kick your own ass.
Right.
No, but let me also say that there are a lot of people out there that don't like traction control because they believe that you plug it in and it just makes you fast.
Right.
Yeah, well,
that's not the truth either.
No, it's not at all that way, and that's why I call it. I say the box or TC, right? But really, the more correct term is wheel speed management, right?
Yes.
In this case, we want our wheels at this certain kind of level, right? This wheel speed, and this is the mechanism for doing that. So, traction control is kind of not the exact term for what we're doing. It's a little different.
Right.
It's not a fix all for your inability to get down a racetrack, right? Like for us to know, like Pete's got a file folder for this car, and we can run as fast as we want to anywhere, right? Like if we want to go this fast, Pete's got a profile for it, right? But he has that because and it's taken tens. I mean,
we've made
huge
amounts of passes,
ass loads of passes to get there, right? You don't just plug it in and say, I want to go 550, right? This is 0 to 5.5 seconds. And that's like, you have to make those runs, and then have to plot your drive shaft curve and then ride that, right? And it's taken 3 years, like we've been making passes, and we learn all the time, right? Like last weekend, not this past weekend, but weekend before at Shadyside, we went a personal best, right? We now have a profile that represents that number, or that ET that we can use, and in order to go faster, Pete can allow it to exceed the threshold, whatever you want to call it, but we had to run that number first to get that drive shaft curve. It's not just plug and play.
Yeah. The other thing is this is something that I had to learn because I was new to no prep, really both of us really.
Mm-hmm.
And when we first started running this thing in no prep, we lost a few races.
We did.
And a lot of them really were because we didn't know what the other guy, if they were fast or slow. I would be getting information, these guys are slow as shit, well, guess what? They kind of weren't,
right.
So I didn't have enough in it. But because of what we do with the wheel speed management now, we're generally speaking kind of overloaded, right? And we don't care what they run, it doesn't matter at this point,
right.
In most cases, and so we don't lose because of that anymore. No. It's been a long time since that's happened.
Well, like last year, the only races we lost were due to parts failure, right? And most of the time it was because we were still running a stock case, stock gear set, turbo 400.
Right.
We lost. I think we lost
and spitting the rear end gear out.
Yeah, we lost 2 races because of the transmission and 1 because we shelled the original 389 gear that we put in the rear end in 2018.
Right.
Oh, and by the way,
that's going to happen.
So there's several questions here that we need to address. But by the way, speaking of the rear end, we cut the ends off of the rear end, the stock 8.8. We welded.
That's still what's in the car.
Yes, and we welded on, new ends with the C-clip eliminator kit and all the bullshit that came with the strange, axles and the whole kit, right? We did that with a straight edge and a pair of jack stands. Like there was no bar in that son of a bitch. It was
Yeah.
literally Biggin and I sitting there, and he's like, "Okay, Chadwick, keep spinning it," and I kept turning it, and he's tapping and tacking and what, and there it was, you know, and that's what is there.
Most of the original framework of the car is still the same from that TV show.
It's the same axles,
and that's one of the points I was going to make about my little video about this is that you don't currently right now you don't need a 25.2 double throwdown $100,000 chassis to be successful in no prep.
Right.
At some point, that's probably going to change. Right. This thing's days are numbers.
Right.
It's going to go the way of all flesh at some point. Right. But as things are now, and for the foreseeable future, I think you don't have to have that. So.
And we do have plans. I've been so back and forth because the spirit of Beer Money is its own deal, right? It's a 10-day built chassis. It's your typical, it's your flagship ship box. Something we're all proud of, right? And obviously is very fast, but for us to continue to be successful, it's going to have to progress, and I've talked to Biggin and Bailey about it, and it's like Pete said, its days are numbered as your 850 certed 10-point, just old shit box where you are going to have to put a decent roll cage and start to make changes. I hate to do it, honestly, just because, like I said, the spirit of the car is it's kind of its own entity, but we do have plans to upgrade that because Pete and I we really enjoy this no prep stuff for multiple reasons. One, it's fairly easy on parts. We've been lucky, knock on wood. We haven't torn up a lot of stuff. We've torn stuff up, but that's racing, right? They're 1-day events for the most part. We go to, like when we went to Shady Side 2 weeks ago, we got there at noon. Mm-hmm. We were gone by 9 o'clock, right?
Yeah.
And it just makes it, we still get to do what we love and we're successful at it. Pete's able to promote his business.
4 days.
Right. We're not there. We don't qualify. It's show up, come off the trailer right into first round, run a 4 or 5 round race. Everybody pack up and go home. See you later.
Yeah.
So Pete and I
hold on. I got some questions.
Okay.
So, Jet Black asks, does the scramble button override traction control?
So let's talk about that for a second, because I'm a little salty about it still. Pete does not allow me to have a scramble button, and he'll agree. He doesn't allow me to have a scramble button because I would use it every single run, because I just know when that thing's hooked up and gone, here comes a scramble.
Yeah.
One, Pete is a good enough tuner that we don't need one of those.
Right.
It's got enough tune up in it to go down the racetrack every run, and I'll let him explain more why we choose not to use a scramble button, but we don't.
Yeah, I have. Have we ever used a scramble?
Yes, we had one
for some reason. Maybe
I
on
think
Netflix or something.
That is exactly when we got it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
that turned out real great. Show people the driver's door of that son of a bitch. Yeah. Yeah. The scramble button was epic.
Right. Yeah. Well, so I'm the type that believes that if you get the tune up right, you don't need a scramble button. And more often than not, the scramble button just gets you in trouble. Right.
Go to Netflix.
And how many times do we hear this from other racers no prepping? They're like, yeah, blah, blah, blah. Grab the scramble button. Next thing I know, I'm pointing the other way around. It's just a constant refrain.
Yep. There were a couple wrecks at Dig or Die that I'm 110%, or at least one, 110% positive the scramble button caused the crash.
Right. That and barefoot. They usually go together. Barefoot, scramble button.
Bad news bears.
Right. Yeah. But the other reason, I guess the technical reason is we're running against a intended drive shaft path, right? And usually we're right there. So there are ways that we could use a scramble button, but we would have to, what we could do is interrupt the drive shaft signal when the scramble button is pressed.
Right.
But
which would override traction control then.
It would eliminate traction control because it would see the drive shaft as being lower than the intended path. Yes. Right. But so that's a possibility.
And when you say the intended path, so if some of you at home you ever hear anybody on TV talking about riding the dots? Okay. So you imagine a line on a graph that's going up, okay, to, from down low at the start of the run to high at the end, which is drive shaft speed.
Yep.
And you put where you want it to be the maximum, and there are dots, right? You don't just put one at the beginning, one at the end. You do it along the way, and it could be like this, right? Well, riding the dots means that if it keeps bouncing against the dots, it's pulling timing or power or whatever you have it programmed to do in order to keep it from bouncing off the dots. The idea is, and this is why traction control doesn't just make everything fast when you turn it on. The idea is that your tune-up goes up there and just tickles them every once in a while. It's right there at the edge, but you don't actually bang on them the whole way, because that's going to just slow the thing down.
Yep. Right. To a certain extent. It's a little different with no prep because we are much more on that, right? Because
that's true. Right. Compared to like a radial car, let's say.
Right.
Yes.
But you can never do that with a radial because the radial doesn't recover that fast, So it's a combination. When you combine the slick and the TC, you can definitely push on it harder. But, you still got to get that drive shaft path where it needs to be. And then you have to meet it with the right amount of compensation for when you get over it. So like in this past weekend's case, Lyle will send me data after every pass, Holly data, and I can see, all right, well, we're real hard on the box, right? So then what I'm starting to do is pull out power where we're on it too much. And then what happens is we quit slipping that tire and jamming into the box, and the car gets faster and faster.
Yep.
So that's why I said it at the beginning of the show. I would send Pete a picture of the VPS, the other tuning tool from Shannon Davis at Davis Technologies that we use, which is the 5-axis vehicle positioning sensor. We use it for wheelie control, pitch and yaw data, and the ability to tune the race car or allow you to pull timing based on how the car, I guess, is reacting to the tune-up and whatnot and where it's moving around on the racetrack. But it also prints a virtual time slip, very similar to the Draggy that everybody uses. We just use Shannon's deal, very accurate for the most part, very similar to what the Draggy is capable of. But every time I would send Pete a picture of the VPS over the course of the weekend, we were getting faster and faster, and Pete was actually pulling power from the car, and we were going faster.
Yeah, the first pass, well, I won't discuss how fast it was, but it was nothing, spectacular.
Right.
And we picked up several tenths through the course of the day, and that was done by removing power.
We picked up 2 tenths from the first pass to the second.
Well, the other factor is the track's going to come around a little bit. But in a case like this one, this past weekend, the track didn't move a whole lot, so
it didn't what I would say come to us. It just kind of, it was in the 40s, maybe low 50s. It spit rain. It actually sleeted for a second. There was some snow flurries around. It was not your ideal racing conditions, right? And that thing, zero aborted runs up there. And only twice did I have to get, and when I say I had to pedal, I think TPS was somewhere in the 80s. I was just feathering, the throttle. Most of the time I was 99% on the TPS the entire run. We 0 aborted runs there. It just went up and down the racetrack, and that's kind of a testament to Shannon's box. I wanted to spend some time talking about that because it's pretty crucial to our success.
So our Facebook user also said, what's y'all's opinion on guessing the light on a tree with instant green versus pro tree versus flashlight starts on a front side no prep? Is it all skill or is it pure luck? I'll give my opinion first. So I'm judgmental about events that have a fake instant green, and a fake instant green is a racetrack when you go and they don't have any of the amber bulbs in except the stage beam bulbs and the green light. That is a fake instant green.
Agreed.
And that means that if the bulbs were in there, they would still be lighting up. And so the truth is that a modern timing system, once you arm it, okay, when you activate the tree comes down typically in 0.7 to 1.2 seconds.
Correct.
Which means that if you are on a racetrack that has that kind of instant green, all you do is that once both players are staged, you go 1/1000 and let go of the button, right? Because that's going to get you there most of the time. What racetracks have done that do that, and this is what they did at redemption races, is they made it to where if you had a reaction time of less than 0.4, they would disqualify you. And I don't see the point of that. All they have to do is actually go in the system and set it to instant green, which is totally a doable deal.
Right.
It doesn't require any fancy shit. Just go in the system, right? So that pisses me off because you easily could do a real instant green and not have to deal with the flashlight start and all of that.
So
just my opinion.
Pete and I dealt with this at Shady Side for the luck of the draw, no prep race, not this past weekend, but the weekend before. It was a flashlight start, which I get, right? Like we're trying to keep it as street, no prep style as we can. I am 110% against using a flashlight, an arm drop, any form of non-traditional drag racing, tree style drag racing if we're running from the right end of the racetrack. And here's why. It takes a flagger, as you call them, somebody to bang the light or drop their arms or show their boobies or whatever. It takes 2 people on the starting line, at least 1 or 2 at the finish line. All of these people to determine who wins a respective round, right? And when we were in Shady Side for this last race, and Clifton Caudle, one of my friends, respect what he does, love the series. We're leading the points right now because we won the first race. A lot of good going on there. Thank you for putting on the series. But that doesn't mean I don't agree with some things, right? And I hate the flashlight. In the semifinal, we go up and Clifton the sun was kind of setting just outside of just off to the side of the left lane. We were in the left lane, shining kind of down the racetrack, and he was just checking to see that both drivers could see the light, right? Fair. Well, he clicked it on and off. He lost count of his on and offs, and he left the light on. Well, he never looked, put it behind his back, brought us both in. When he pulled the light to his chest, it was already on. Well, I knew what I would realize then, well, he left it on. When he turns it off, I'll leave. Well, he turned it off. I left. The other guy left. And,
and it was fine because you both did it.
Correct. And nothing against the Plemons. Jeff Plemons, a good friend of mine. Love those people. They're great. And he was right in his defense. He said, well, the light was screwed up. We need to rerun. And I couldn't argue that. It was not right. It was wrong, and it was just a mistake by Clifton, and that's fine. We reran the round. We won that one, went on to win the race. Everything was good. But you get rid of those problems if you use the tree and the timing system that is put into place in the first place, right? We go to Pennsylvania this weekend, an instant green race. It was 4 bulbs, and they did not use auto start. When the 4 bulbs were on, they had it on instant green. The starter saw all 4 bulbs were on. He flipped the switch, and sometime later on, the instant green, there was no way to guess it. No way at all. And it was perfect.
And that's the way it should be.
Exactly right. If the light turned red, you left early. If it was green, it was a race. And when you got to the finish line, there was a freaking win light, right?
Yeah.
And it made the event run so smooth. There's not bringing everybody in. Are you bumping? Are you not bumping? It's just a mess, man. And I get it. You want to keep it street, but we're not on street. We're on the racetrack. And
that's the deal.
The timing system and the tree, just like God intended.
Yes. And it doesn't mean you publish the time slips or any of that. That's all fine, right? But
we can race without getting time slips. They didn't get time slips this past weekend. Right.
But you still got a win light.
But we use the win light and we use the tree, and it makes
100%.
And I get it on this top side racing. You can't, there's no way to do that. Well, there probably is, but it's way too, it would just take an army. So you use the flashlight because that is street style no prep racing.
Right.
And Pete would agree, we've both grown to hate, if we're running from the tree, which 99% of the time we do, use the freaking timing system, man. It's just a mess.
Well, here at XRP, there's a group that comes out and wants to do these flashlight start events, and they go to the extra stupid side, in my opinion. So even if you have your timing system not activated, if it's just got power, then the stage lights, the pre-stage and stage beams work, right? So even if you were going to do a flashlight start, at least do it where these guys stage. Then you know both cars are where they're supposed to be, right?
Correct.
But no, these asshats, they had to put a new line on the track that was like a foot further down the racetrack than the actual deal. And so everybody's pulling them in, and then the starter's like, oh, bullshit, you're too far. And they're yelling and screaming. And you're like, dude, are you retarded? There are 2 wonderful light bulbs here that will tell everybody they're in the right place. Like, for the love of God, you know? And so, 100%.
Well,
that, don't get me wrong, I will race them, but there's no reason to make it that complicated.
We had
no reason.
Actually 2, I guess, fiascos at the same race, right? So in the second round, we're running a blower car, David Porter and his guys. They pull. So what they do is there's 2 lines drawn, like you said. A turbo car pulls to the first one. You get to bump to the second one. If you don't want to bump, they pull you to the second bulb. Then you got a spool. I had to nod to let them know that I was on boost. Like, it's just this big deal. But we're running this blower car, and Josh Udi pulls me to the second line, steps away. I'm ready, right? I'm on the trans brake. I'm not to the wood yet. But when Clifton pointed to me, in other words, okay, it's your time to spool, I went to the wood. I shook my head. Well, when Clifton pointed at me, David went to the wood. It wasn't his time yet, right?
Right.
Well, when he realized he was early, he came off of the throttle. Well, when he came off of the throttle, his car cut off.
Oh.
Well, his crew guys and him start waving their hands. So Clifton tells me to stop. So I'm on the 2-step, ready to rip, right? So I come off of the 2-step, realize what's going on. They let him refire, and then made me spool again, and like, it spit transmission fluid on the windshield. It was just this big deal. And had we been a 4 bulbs as a race, and he would have been fully staged and went to the wood and cut off. When I went in, he'd have timed out. Boom, I'm gone. You get rid of that, right? And like, had it tore up my transmission, or, God forbid I'd have lost or something, like, you want to talk about somebody that'd been mad, so I don't agree with if you're from the tree side and the timing system's available, use it, period, end of conversation. But my phone died, but I memorized most of my list. A new partner to us, very recent, is Amsoil. Pete has used Amsoil pretty much exclusively for any car that comes through this shop. There's a rack up above, behind the camera here, that's an Amsoil display rack that's got all forms of, whether it's gear oil or motor oil or transmission fluid or whatever. The Dart, Justin Martin's Nova, Mark Rogers' car, Beer Money, Biggin, Brad Edwards stuff, you name it. If it's been through this shop and they trust in Pete in their lubricants, that's what we use. And they are a new partner and a new sponsor for us. And we really appreciate them. We've used them for years anyway, and it just seemed right. So, Pete's had great success with their stuff, in comparison to, other brands we've seen great results. I'm not saying that there's,
especially on turbo stuff. It spools better.
And great, the bearings look good. We use their, this thing has got Amsoil from bumper to bumper. Engine oil, transmission fluid, rear gear. It's all the Amsoil stuff. Pete's a dealer here. If anybody needs to buy oil, you can come here to get that. He can suggest what you need. We've used it long enough. We've even got to the point in this thing in the summertime, we'll use a blend of engine oils, and, we've got it figured out. Their break-in oil is fantastic. You guys use that for any new engine that leaves here, leaves with, 6 to 8 quarts of the break-in oil. Z-Rod, their stuff with the zinc in it and whatnot. really good stuff, and we really appreciate those guys. I don't think. Oh, Fire Aid. Obviously, I don't like catching on fire. So Fire Aid and Spa Technique.
You're kind of bitchy about that now. I'm just saying. I mean,
one time was enough. Mag's Fab Works, Jason Digby and Mag at Mag's Fab Works. They've been a part of the beer money process as well. Jesus, I hope I haven't forgotten anyone. I need to go look at all the stickers.
Yeah, you got like 9 minutes.
Man, I think we're good. Right?
Okay.
I think we covered most of them. Yeah. I think we're good. Oh,
so
no, we're not. Obviously, where I work. Modern Racing, where I'm employed now, where the pro mod operations and whatnot. We've got one of our latest and greatest injector harnesses on this thing. Plug and play deal for the Holly mil spec, 90-degree boot deal, really nice. And we are starting to more and more offer more and more plug and play stuff and for Fuel Tech, for Holly. We've got an auxiliary harness that's unterminated. Who did paint on the car? I've run one of the Modern Racing CO2 regulators. If you're not familiar with Modern, www.modernracing.net, go check out what we've got. I think I need to let go of the button in beer money. Brett, I'm going to lay off of you about crashing, but
yeah,
I think this thing's a little
kicking
too
the rods out too. Yeah.
But I wanted to take, if anybody's got any questions, we've got like less than 10 minutes left. You can try to get them in, but I just wanted to take tonight to we haven't done it yet. We've needed to go through the parts and the people that have supported this car. We could not have done it without them, and would not be nearly as fast nor successful without all these companies. All the guys here at HED that work hard to keep the motor in tip-top shape. Eric Yost and the guys at Customs by Biggin. Anytime I have a problem, I barnet something. In fact, I need to take the fuel cell out and get it a crack welded up in it before we go out on our next adventure. Not going to say when or where we're going to get back out. Might be this weekend, might not, probably not. But Mag, you're welcome, dude. We appreciate all that you guys do and spreading the gospel for fire safety. I hope I didn't miss anybody. My phone died. Well, you got the hashtag list. Let me make sure.
Yeah, I got it.
I want to say thank you to everybody as well. We've gotten we've had so much fun with this car. And obviously the success is like, it's really cool.
Yeah, we talked.
I will tell you, like, the excitement of winning with this thing is genuine. Like, there is something about this car.
Beer Money won its first Wally, dude.
Yeah.
Like we actually got, this is, one of the divisional style Wallies. That was an NHRA track that we raced at. So Beer Money won its first NHRA Wally. VP Racing Fuels, Jason Ruckert, the guys at VP came on board last year, supply us with all the M1 that we could ever possibly need, and the barrel of nitro over there. So Jason, VP, thanks to all you guys. Parker Speed, pretty badass.
What's the weight bias, or do you want to say?
Oh no, we can't talk about that.
Okay, I didn't think
varies.
so.
We'll just say that it varies from track to track.
It does.
Okay. Two
something
other
else.
things. So Rod Hagen, yes. So Stephen Johnston says, what does Elite Motorsports think of the Beer Money car?
So that's funny you asked. Beer Money. So Richard asked me for the first time that he saw me post about it, what was that pile of shit that I drive when I'm not in his pro mod?
Yeah.
And I threatened him that I was going to rattle can it red and put Elite Motorsports on the side of it. But we agreed that if anything Elite goes on it, we're going to do the Elite Cultivation, hit the old weed and speed shop over there.
Yes.
So maybe a theme of that sometime in the near future. But he thinks it's funny, man. It's he's gonna get a full dose of it when we run the 4 wides in Charlotte.
What would happen is if we had Beer Money there next to the Pro Mod car, and like we had the pits next to each other,
right,
he'd be crushed at the number of people that showed up to check out Beer Money. How
much time do we have?
You got 6 minutes.
Okay. So I know some people saw my post about looking for a helicopter the other day. The second points race for the Luck of the Draw No Prep series is the Saturday of.
You're already breaking your own rule. I love this.
What rule?
About talking where you're going.
Oh, well, I mean, we're leading the points there. People know we're
yeah.
going to show up. But so it's the same weekend as the 4 wides in Charlotte. So I'm gonna do some finagling and get the car to Pageland before Saturday. And if there's any way possible, whether it takes a helicopter or not, I'm gonna do my best to make the last round of qualifying in the Pro Mod for the 4 wides, and then jet to Pageland and try to make the race.
So if anybody has a small plane or helicopter hookup that can get us there, we need it for 3 people, right? I mean, I'll be there, you'll be there, right?
Yeah.
We need 3 of us to get from the NHRA race.
So there's a helicopter pad right off of the right side of the racetrack at Charlotte.
Yeah.
And we could land somewhere. There's a fire department not far from Pageland. I'm sure we could land out there or something. So like, it's super possible. But from what I've gathered, like the average hourly rental for a helicopter is like $600. So, I guess if we're real desperate, and we win 3 or 4 more no prep races between now and then, maybe we'll just bite the bullet and rent it anyway. But that is why I was asking.
How long is the flight?
Brad. So my buddy Brad Mills, which we can. Yeah. So over the weekend, Pete was tuning somewhere else. I took Jay Wiles, who assembles motors here with Pete in the afternoons, his son Jesse, David Udi, Josh Udi's dad, and my buddy Brad Mills, who is a pilot for American. He came with me, and he said it would be like less than 20 minutes, or like maybe 10 minutes or something like that. I mean, something super quick.
So even if it's $600 an hour, if it's 30 minutes, it would only be $300.
If they don't charge for the full hour, yes.
Right.
But I mean, it sounds completely ridiculous.
They can come over to Biggins, pick up Pete first.
Yep.
Then we'll do a whole hour. They pick Pete up in Mooresville and then come down and pick us up in Charlotte. And
I'm probably on a no-fly list, so
Pete's scared of a helicopter, apparently.
But again, I just want to thank all the people, all the fans that follow the car and buy T-shirts. You can go to www.lylebarnettracing.com and buy Beer Money merchandise, Pro Mod merchandise, all the companies that have supported us. I hope we make you proud. We really enjoy representing your brand, and as much as possible, we're going to keep this thing on the racetrack this year. Pete this year has tuned a vehicle, both truck and car, that I've driven in 4 races, and we've won all 4 of them. So we've got a pretty good record going so far, and we obviously hope to keep that going. So again, just thank you to all of you. I wanted to dedicate an entire show to just talking about all the great companies and people that have supported this thing throughout the years, and we just hope we make you proud.
Kevin Bortree says, I have a buddy with a small 2-seat plane and a parachute if you want to come in like a boss.
Look,
I'm down.
Thank you.
Look, man.
I'm down.
Mama didn't raise no bitch. So
yeah. Jet Black says an ultralight may be the right money.
Yeah, I'd crash that thing right. I'd take that thing all the way to the king of the crash. Imagine the 2 of us
in an ultralight? That'd be some funny shit.
I couldn't. No. You're flying. You're the pilot.
I have flown, small planes. So I started flying little planes when I was a kid. So yeah.
I think I'm gonna just trust Brad. We'll just hire Brad.
He's our guy.
We know a pilot.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Pete, I'm glad you were on the show tonight. It was awesome.
Yeah.
Everybody that tuned in, we had a lot of people watching tonight. Hope you learned some more. If you want to know more of the secrets behind Beer Money, then go visit it at a racetrack near you.
And check out Pete's real good at doing stuff YouTube channel and Stop Being Lame.
Yeah, it's probably the best TV show you've ever seen. Duh.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's awesome. Yeah. And it makes me laugh because
he gives away all the secrets.
You all the shit nobody else will show you.
There are puzzles and pieces in every single video that are going to be this grand prize at the end of it all. So you have to watch every single video at least twice.
Right.
So, I like it.
Yeah, whatever.
All right, boys. Thank you so much. to everybody that's out there, be safe, go have fun, drink more beer. If you are interested in seeing more about Rocky Mountain Race Week, we are literally going live in 4 minutes with Matt Frost on the next broadcast for Rocky Mountain Race Week announcements tonight. So I'm gone all week in Vegas for bracket racing. So all the live streams happening tonight in one night.
Sweet.
Why wouldn't you?
Awesome. All right, Chad.
Boys. I will talk to you later. Let me know when we find a helicopter.
Sounds good. See ya.
Oh, Jesus. Help us, Lord.